In spite of every possible mathematical advantage in favor of the Democratic Party, Republicans remain a consistent and constant threat. Why? It is because Republicans can light fire under people's asses. And they can do it despite lying. The Democrats don't even have to lie. You can just talk about what's actually happening, and that would be enough. Look, I know what people want me to say. I'm a lefty. It's November 3rd. The Democrats got owned last night. It was bad. And I know that there are going to be a lot of commentators out there right now talking about how the Democrats have betrayed their base by failing to get anything done in the recent months of the Biden administration, which has led to the Republicans performing better than expected in a bunch of state races. And we'll talk about that. But my take is actually a little different, maybe a little worse, actually. I mean, a little more doomer. We'll talk about it. Look, as one chatter pointed out recently, the big losers from last night were not the socialists. You know, we did have a big sad moment when our beloved. Why would you redirect to the main page when I click? I guess I just can't click anywhere on the page. The entire page is just a link. India Walton, as I'm sure many of you know, is a honest-to-God socialist and altogether friendly-looking person who won the Democratic primary for mayorship in Buffalo, which was very exciting. Not only would she have been the first woman mayor, but she's also, a socialist, and I think that's cool. But unfortunately, she lost last night. The reason she lost is because the candidate that she beat back during the primaries came back in with a, let's be fair, historic write-in campaign. Like, an unbelievable, seriously. With the steel chair, he ran on in there in a write-in campaign and just blew her out and managed to hold his chair. Now, I will not lie, that is impressive, okay? I can set aside my disappointment for a moment to acknowledge that, yeah, it is fairly impressive to overturn a result like that with a write-in campaign. Now, let's get back to the hate. So, Byron Brown sucks a little bit, just a smidge, actually. I'm not a huge fan of Byron Brown personally. The Ballotpedia page for the man basically says everything that you need to know. The campaign between him and India was a difficult and hard-fought one, but you can see who supports who, Surprisingly, Chuck Schumer actually endorsed India Walton, which I think is cool. The DSA did as well, and the Working Families Party of New York. And hey, I like, working families. I love parties. I'm so-so on New York, but what are you going to do? She also got an endorsement that was originally levied at Brown, but after the primary switched over to Walton. But Brown, he got a little bit of help, from the rafters. He had endorsements, of course. He had endorsements from all of the local police associations. Love that, thank you. You also have, where they got their money from. Walton and Brown both received support from satellite organizations. The Working Families Party, National PAC, supported Walton, and the New York State Association of Realtors and the New York Republican Party supported Brown. Cool. So moving on from that, and we'll talk about it more in a bit, that was something, us lefty types had our eyes on for a while. But there was also the Virginian and New Jersey gubernatorial races, where things didn't go quite as planned for the Democratic Party. This is where I think the major upsets were, and where I guess the biggest lessons are to be learned. So with regards to Virginia, this is just spectacular stuff, guys. I love it. It's it's truly phenomenal. So Republican Glenn Youngkin won the Virginia governor's race, in spite of the fact that Biden beat out Trump by 10 points. Ye back in the day. Now that is an astonishing turn of events right there. Wow. A state that went decidedly to Biden, now electing by a comfortable margin, a Republican. And by the way, this is not in line with expected polling. Polling suggested to us that this was going to be, maybe the worst a close race, but no, this went pretty bad. It went pretty goddamn bad. Likewise, New Jersey, in spite of the fact that polling put us very comfortably in the lead, is currently, I think still, right now, pretty close. They're racing down that road. They're going to have to bust out the slow motion camera to find out which of these two are going to make it across the finish line faster. And this doesn't bode well for 2022. There are a lot of really obvious political predictions that I can make right now that you guys have probably heard from every other progressive commentator, and I'm going to lay them out because I think they're true, and I don't, my desire to be contrarian is not, in this case, superseding my desire to provide an accurate perspective on this issue. Look, Democrats are a remarkable party. They are a historic party. They are a very special party full of very special boys and girls. Do you know why? Because only the Democratic Party could lose when basically every single individual policy they fight for is very popular on a national stage. That is remarkable. If you break the Democrats down into their political positions and pull for them, they are like overwhelmingly, almost everything that they push for pulls incredibly well. Whether you're talking the pharmaceutical business, healthcare stuff, reform, $15 an hour minimum wage, marijuana, there's so many stuff, so much stuff, so many things. And somehow they form a sum, which is a whole, which is less than the sum of its parts, which is truly special. I think we should all be proud to be part of a community that is so legendarily incompetent in achieving an expected level of popularity. Now, I'll tell you why. There's a narrative going around right now that the reason why things are going poorly in Virginia and New Jersey is because the Democrats aren't getting enough done. They're not fighting hard enough for these policy positions. That's the narrative, isn't it? I've been on left Twitter. Yes, I have. I'm happy to tell you all with 100% certainty that this is an incorrect assessment of the situation. Unfortunately, we do not live on Twitter. We live in reality. And in reality, voters neither know about nor care about any of the shit their politicians do. Only what they say and how loud they say it. It is a tragedy. I do not think that successful implementation of good, economically progressive policies are what the Democrats need right now. That's what America needs right now. American voters, human beings, need those policies to be put through. That's what we need. We require that, like we need food or air or water. But what the Democratic Party needs, the electoral body, the political organization, is fire. They lack fire. There are some particular edge cases with the Virginia gubernatorial race that I'll talk about in a bit, but when you get right down to it, the problem is that if you talk to your average Trump voter, why do they support Trump? Because if you run down the policies, they're usually opposed to every single thing the Republican Party stands for. Seriously. How many Trump voters have we had on this stream who have apologized for Trump's behavior? Right? They're always distancing themselves from it, aren't they? They're always like, oh, yeah, I voted for Trump, and I know this, and I know that, but, but I really think this. And the thing they're always really convinced by is some meaningless bullshit fucking nothing issue that they are convinced will singly determine the future of this country in spite of the fact that in 6 months nobody will be talking about it. See critical race theory, the Muslim ban, the cartel, the caravan, all this shit, cancel culture, critical race theory in schools ended up being a huge talking point in the Virginia election. Do you think this is going to be talked about in 2 or 3 years? Maybe, if that's a point they decide to stick to. Or it could very well be tossed into the wind with nothing having actually been achieved, because they will drop and adopt culture war talking points effortlessly. It's not about what you can do for the American people. It's how effectively you convince them that they're going to die if they don't vote for you. That's it. That's all it comes down to, okay? The most effective politicians in American history have not been the ones who did the most. They have been the ones who convinced voters how necessary it was to vote for them. And Biden won in 2020 because the Democratic Party was sufficiently convinced that Trump was a threat. That is the reason why. You can take a look at why people voted for Biden. It wasn't because they were excited about Biden's policies. That's why people voted for Bernie. People liked Bernie because of what Bernie wanted and did and said. But that's not why they cared about Biden. Nobody gave a fuck about Biden because they were passionate about Biden. They cared about him because they thought he was the best shot at fighting Trump. But Trump wasn't running on November 2nd, 2021, was he? No, he was not. In spite of Democrats' best efforts, it turns out that the fear-mongering over Trump in lieu of delivering a consistent and compelling campaign message is not actually an effective way at winning local off-season races, if you can believe it. Yeah, I saw Shu posted this, and this is wild to me, by the way. This is from the Virginia race. I'm not kidding right here, okay? This right here was paid for by the Democratic candidate. This right here. Look at this. The Democrats threw this out. This was their messaging. Look at that. You're not going to believe it, guys. But the Republican gubernatorial candidate is on good terms with Trump, the most beloved person in the Republican Party right now. That's crazy. Wow. That's wacky. Thank you for informing me. It's like he took half the message. You know, in 2020, any reasonable political analyst could confirm that the reason the Democratic Party was able to achieve its record number of votes was for fear from Trump, or fear of Trump, right? I think any reasonable political analyst would agree with that take. Yeah, Biden got a record number of votes because people were afraid of Trump winning. I think that's fair. I think that's reasonable. I think that's that's a bipartisan, reasonable thing to say. Anyone would agree with that, okay? So they take half the message, you know. We need to project that fear. We need to continue that fear. And listen, I do not disagree with that, okay? You should fear the Republicans. It's a fash party. Fuck them. That's a good message. Yeah. You should be worried about them. They'll kill you. 100%. They'll do it and they'll brag about it. And then they'll lie to the media and say Antifa did it. And then when it was proven Antifa didn't do it, they'll say they did it, but it was a good thing that they did it. And then Tucker Carlson will make a documentary saying that the one person who died while killing you is the real victim in the whole thing. Fuck them. Not going to blame them for taking advantage of that fear potential, but that's not enough, is it? You need to have a strong, affirmative, forward-facing message. And Democrats fucking suck at this. They are fucking terrible at this. Does anybody else think it's a little bit embarrassing? Like, let's move past the Bernie circle jerk for a second. Does anyone else think it's embarrassing that Bernie, an independent with very little prior ties to the Democratic Party, was able to seize control of the entire party's talking points and redirect the entire party's messaging from every election onward in one primary cycle? Does anyone else think that's a little bit fucking weird? So, not to say I don't love the guy, but what does it say about the fucking Democratic Party that they had just decades and decades of like Clintonite like tier messaging, and then Bernie comes around and single-handedly says, hey, what if we tried having a message? What if we tried actually having a direction that we could look towards? What if we had a principle? Would that be possible? What if we acted like we gave a shit? Would that be something we could try doing? Could we do that maybe? Is that possible? Have we tried trying? And Democrats were like, damn, I fucking hate this guy, but I like the cut of his jib. We should pretend that we're pretending to try, or pretending that we're trying to try. We should pretend that we're trying to try. Yes! He's right. We need to pretend that we're trying to try harder than we've ever pretended to try before. And so they have. And now we live here. It's not enough, clearly. Because Republicans, in spite of their dog shit proposals, Republicans don't have fucking policies. Republicans do not have policies, okay? In spite of Republicans' complete unwillingness to govern, in spite of the fact that they're fucking insane, in spite of the fact that the Republican Party is a minority, in spite of the fact that Donald Trump's approval rating never even came close to reaching the high of Biden's, in spite of every possible mathematical advantage in favor of the Democratic Party, Republicans remain a consistent and constant threat. Why? It is because Republicans can light fire under people's asses. And they can do it despite lying. The Democrats don't even have to lie. You can just talk about what's actually happening, and that would be enough. You just have to be consistent and direct with your messaging. But they're such fucking pussies. I'm not one of those lefties who thinks that you can just wave your hands and snap your fingers and, oh, healthcare goes through. I don't think that can happen. And you know what? I also don't think that Biden has the power to magically get Manchin and Sinema to get off their asses and do something good. I don't think that he has that power. I know that he doesn't have that power. I know that we're in a difficult position with the Senate gridlock. But that doesn't excuse the fact that when Donald Trump wanted to popularize a policy, he would campaign on it and he would run around the country screaming about it. Every week he would be at a new venue, and a bunch of MAGA hats would be lined up behind him, and he would lean into the microphone and he would say woke bad, Muslims bad, gays bad, trans icky. And that would be headline for the next month. And people would be talking about it, and it would matter, and it would mean something. It would mean nothing objectively, but it would mean something to the people who gave a shit. But what does Biden do? I know the dude's old, but sorry, this is part of your fucking responsibility as a president. It is not enough to just sit there in Washington and go, I'm talking to them. We're talking behind the scenes. That's not enough. That's not politics. The president is America's first public speaker. That's their most important job. That's more important than literally anything else. Every other job is secondary to that. Head of the executive branch, secondary to being the head public speaker. Commander-in-chief, secondary to be the head public speaker. Every other role the president fulfills, everything else, as we've seen, by the way, through incompetent presidencies in the past, can just be coasted by. We don't expect our national government to do shit anyway, okay? But being a solid, direct, and effective public speaker for the issues that you want to campaign on, the issues you care about, this is irreplaceable. And because of the National Democratic Party's incompetence at pushing a consistent and clear message, the local elections are fucked too. Guys, I'm sorry, the average voter does not pay that much attention to local elections. They just see who has which letter next to the name of the local candidate, and they just sign off on that. Voter turnout is always pathetically low for these types of elections. You really are coasting on the ability for the national party to get shit done. It's not always 100%. There is a balance between the effectiveness of local and federal messaging, but for the most part, you are relying on a kind of transitive association to the national party here. And yet, clearly it's not enough, because voter turnout is down disproportionately for the Democrats. Voter turnout got lowered across the board, but it got lowered more for Democrats. Do you know why? Because Republicans are insane. Because Republicans wake up every morning with their eyes bloodshot because they weren't able to sleep because they were fantasizing about their white kid getting taught that they're a devil by CRT-loving teachers at school in first grade. They get up and they drink a cup of coffee, and they drive to their local school board meeting so that they can throw tomatoes at the black like secretary to own the libs. And then they go to a QAnon rally. And they don't need to go to a job because they're a trust fund. Look, it's they don't they're psychotic, okay? You're not going to move most Republicans over. That's not who you need to focus on. You need to focus on, more than anything else, getting your own base invested in what you can do. And how do you want to do that, okay? Maybe you can put forward, propose, and implement actual change. But I'm really sorry, guys. As much of a materialist as I like to think I am, I really don't think the media apparatuses in this country are geared towards informing people on how much better their lives are as a product of policy put through on a national level or a local level. I'm sorry! When people on Twitter are like, the Democrats just need to put forward this bill or that bill, I don't think it would change that much because voters are stupid and they're not informed on what's actually going on. So when voters' lives get better, guys, have you seen what voters talk about when the gas prices go up and down? Their commentary is psychotic. Voters, the average voter, is not capable of grasping the complexities of political policy and the ways in which it influences their lives. There's sometimes a little bit, I guess, if it's very direct, like the government just sends out checks, then I guess that's an easy one to see. That's why Trump, by the way, had his signature on all those $1,200 checks thrown out there, because he correctly knew that in spite of the fact that he was not really the architect of that program, people would attribute it to him. And that's about as direct of a helping hand the government can throw anyone, and he got his name on it. But for the most part, I don't think this very indirect, oh yeah, I passed a bill so that in 3 years your healthcare prices will go down. People don't vote on that. People vote on what they see on the news. People vote on how angry they are made by the pundits they watch. People vote on how desperately they feel the need to oust their opposition from government. And sometimes, God willing, sometimes you actually do manage to get a huge push for something really big and really obvious thrown out there, and maybe you can unite behind that. But you cannot rely on shit like this. These half-assed, oh yeah, dude, Trump, yeah, dude. That's not enough. You can't just do that. Especially with, God, I don't even want to get into the critical race theory shit behind the fucking Virginia. I don't even want to get behind that, man. Look, I'll just say this. This is not a class reductionist take, and if you think it is, you can eat my ass, okay? We should never abandon the fight for racial gender equality. However, holy shit, can these fucking 65-year-old bureaucrat lifer politicians please stop trying to, bid for woke points by, sounding super progressive on, edge identity issues instead of, doing their fucking job. Can we please, please, please stop? It's like they're trying to get fucking bonus points on an exam, you know? They fail on every, will you make citizens' lives better? Will you, deliver clear messaging that increases the likelihood of you and your party members winning? Will you say that there are too many white teachers in the state of Virginia 2 days before the election? Yep. Great one. Good idea. Great one. Smart move. Great. Very nice. Good. Very, very good. I really don't want to play into the class reductionist shit too, but I think the best thing that Democrats could do is be passively in support of progressive issues, but not hyperfixate on it, you know? They need to adopt the kind of attitude towards these issues. They need to be like, yeah, we're pro BLM, police brutality is a thing. Let's talk about the real issues. Because invariably, when they hyperfixate on it, you have these incredibly bad these optically monstrous you descend into this weird culture war battle that Democrats just aren't equipped to win and Republicans are, you know. But you have to, it's just, set to it and then move past. Now I think most Democrats are okay about this, but particularly the the incumbent Virginia gubernatorial candidate, our man Terry, his comments on critical race theory and the white teachers and stuff, I think really hamstringed him towards the end there. You gotta... Oh, sorry, not the incumbent. Sorry, the... Oh, no, he wasn't. The other one was the incumbent. Sorry. My bad. The Democratic candidate. It's not... Former incumbent. Thank you. Yeah. McAuliffe was such an uninspiring candidate. Yeah, well, if you really, really, really hated being taught by white teachers, then maybe you could get behind that. I don't know. Do you understand the point that I'm trying to arrive at here? It is not enough to say the Democrats should do more, because doing more isn't really what gets the voters invested in you. If voters were honestly motivated just by a material, fact-based analysis of which party is better for them, the Democrats would never lose any elections, because Republicans only make things worse, like every time. Seriously. If you take a look at everything done under Trump's presidency in terms of how it benefited the average American, and then compare it to what Biden has already done in the first, year and a half, 2 years, if voters were capable of rationally assessing who's done more good things for them, then the Democrats would never lose an election. So clearly, that's not the issue here. It would be better if they did more. I'm not going to fight against them doing more. Them doing more good things would make it easier for them to have good messaging, but messaging is ultimately the thing we're pushing for here. And I bet you're wondering, why are the Democrats so bad at messaging? Why do they... How? They're the largest political party in the history of the United States, which is the most powerful country on earth. They have billions of dollars in terms of total assets, media connections, access to political capital. Why are they so bad at it? The answer is simple. It's not because they're pussies. It's not because they're stupid. I do think they're pussies and I do think they're stupid, but that's not the reason why. It's also not because they don't give a shit. They give a lot of shits, but the thing they give the most shits about is preventing people like us from taking over the party. People like Bernie Sanders in India are terrifying to them, because the idea that a person can work outside of traditional party infrastructure to achieve power is a direct threat to what is typically the gatekeep to political power in this country, which is corporate backing. Corporate backers are the primary financiers of many political campaigns and of the parties, and that's just generally the big honchos that political parties have to make sure they keep placated. Of course, we live in a capitalist country. Money is the fuel that allows the forward motion of engines of any kind of political power, whether it's in government or outside of government. That is an objective fact. So when Bernie Sanders is able to win get very close to winning the presidency in 2016, being fueled almost entirely by local donations of, $23, that's very, very scary, because it means potentially that this big, highly selective system of gatekeeping and, back alley, $27. This system of gatekeeping and rigorous, selection, that you could circumnavigate all of that simply by being popular enough as an economic populist. Is that not terrifying? Imagine you're the Democratic Party and you're, no one singly leads it, but imagine that you're, one of the higher ups and you know how the game works, you know how the system functions, and you understand that the most important thing your party needs to do, above everything else, is keep corporate donors happy, because that kind of fuels the whole system. It's self-perpetuating. The most important car in the train is the engine car, is it not? You have to keep the system going. That's just how it works. And then you realize that this very complicated system that you've established to ensure that the only way people can become president is if they go through systems that ensure they will be, compliant with corporate demands, is being circumnavigated by 8,000-year-old New York Jewish guys. Spooky! Boo! Sorry, is Halloween over for you? Huh? Boo! That's the real Halloween. Bernie Sanders primary? Yeah, that's what scared them. That's their Halloween. What the Democratic Party is afraid of, in this instance, is if they adopt clear and consistent messaging, which not only pushes back against the fear of Republicans, but also adopts a strong economically populist political agenda. Even an economically populist agenda, which is beneficial for their corporate benefactors, of which there are many, like the infrastructure bill. Good American infrastructure, good American healthcare, these things can benefit everyone, including corporations. This is like an almost universal W. But if they push for it too hard, folks, who ends up looking a hell of a lot better? It's us. The harder Democrats go for economic populist messaging, the easier it is for us to use those talking points to bolster our own campaigns, because it blurs the line between us and them. If Democrats, moderate Democrats, are running around going, yeah, we need to do this and that, and, the working class is being supplanted by the blah, 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 it becomes a lot harder for them to turn around and call us radical socialists who don't know what we're talking about. Because we're saying the same thing, just, more honestly and more completely. You understand what I'm saying? They have to maintain that distinction, because that distinction is the easiest way to keep us from having more of a hold over the party. And we're already getting a stronger and stronger hold with every successive election, so that's probably something they're really terrified of. Republicans don't have to worry about this, because the far-right, crazy populist Republicans are equally in line with the corporate interests, The only corporate interests that the far, far, far-right QAnon types don't like are like tech companies, because they get banned for saying the N-word. That's the only big corporate interests that they're not in line with. Apart from that, the far, far, far right of the Republican Party is just as good for corporations as the regular neocon Bush-era Republican Party. So for that reason, they're not as concerned with gatekeeping, because a lack of gatekeeping doesn't fundamentally threaten corporate power in the way that the existence of gatekeeping prevents in the Democratic Party. So to sum it all up, we have a complicated network of competing political interests here, folks, okay? The Democratic Party is full of people who genuinely care about making the world a better place. However, some knowingly and some unknowingly, they are all in line with the system that prioritizes a complicitness with corporate power. We live in a capitalist country. Knowingly or unknowingly, they are architects of a system of exclusion, which not only makes it harder for people like us to win, see what happened with, India, but it also makes it more difficult for them to adopt talking points that they know would empower our political movement. Because they can't adopt those talking points, they have difficulty uniting behind really strong populist messaging, which would be the easiest way to get high voter turnout in the districts that apparently don't give a fuck about them when they're not being threatened by Trump's potential victory. That's the only path forward for the Democratic Party, and that's why Dems are fucked in 2022 unless they're willing to bite that bullet. They either need to accept that they are going to lose to the Republicans forever onward, or they are going to have to tread ever closer to our side of the fence. In the same way that Republicans have trended closer and closer to fascism with time, Democrats must trend closer and closer to socialism with time. The old battle begins yet again, because the alternative is perpetual irrelevance, where Democrats are at best a toss-up for the national elections and at worst unfavored, and locally they're only in safe, they're only a shoo-in in like safe blue counties and states, and outside of that, it's either a toss-up or a win for Republicans. And in a country where there are far more people who agree with us on every policy position than people who agree with Republicans on theirs, that is an unacceptable thing to me. Completely unacceptable. This is not a country where people are on a toss-up between Republican and Democrat positions. They're on a toss-up between Republicans and Democrats, and that's a very sad place to be.